The wind whipped cold across the Congress Avenue Bridge in Austin, Texas, carrying with it the scent of rain and city smog. Below, the Colorado River churned in silence. Michael Rivera stood on the edge, hands trembling, one foot already dangling into the void. The weight of everything, the wasted years, the betrayals, the loneliness, pressed on his chest like an iron hand. His clothes hung loose on a frame too thin for 32 years. Dirt clung to his jeans. His once beautiful hands, the same that used to play jazz guitar like fire, now shook from withdrawal. The pain in his gut wasn't just hunger. It was something deeper. A hollow he couldn't name. No one noticed him. Cars passed, joggers moved on the sidewalk. He was invisible, forgotten. "This is it," he whispered. His voice cracked like broken strings. "No more. No one's coming." But then he heard it. Not through the noise of the traffic or the city, but inside him. A voice, calm and steady, like thunder wrapped in love. "Michael." He froze. His breath caught. He looked around. No one. "Michael? Rise." He stumbled back from the ledge, legs weak. He gripped the railing, panting. The voice had come not from outside, but within his chest. Not imagined, not madness, something else. Before we continue, if this story is pulling at something inside you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. This is just the beginning of Michael's journey. One of pain, faith, and an impossible comeback. Let's walk through it together. Michael sat down on the cold concrete, back against the railing. The voice echoed in his bones. "Rise. Rise from what? From this hell? From the grave of who he used to be?" He stared at his hands, once admired, now cracked and shaking. The last time he'd held a guitar, he couldn't finish a song. He remembered the smell of the bar, the lights, the disappointment in Jesse's eyes. Jesse. That name still stung. A gust of wind pushed through his jacket. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His last meal was a half sandwich from a trash bin behind a gas station. He'd been robbed the night before by another man on the street, a stranger who apologized after hitting him. "Sorry, man," the guy had muttered. "Just hungry." Michael hadn't fought back. He pulled his hoodie tighter and looked up at the sky. The clouds swirled in shades of gray, and thunder grumbled faintly in the distance. Rain was coming. Maybe that voice had just been his mind cracking. Maybe he was finally going crazy. But it didn't feel like madness. It felt like mercy. He stood slowly, legs unsure. He walked away from the edge, not because he had a plan, but because something had changed. Just a whisper, but enough. The voice had pierced the silence that had haunted him for years. Each step down the bridge felt like a test. He didn't know where he was going, but for the first time in a long while he wasn't ready to fall. Not tonight. Not yet. And as the first drops of rain touched his skin, Michael felt the strange warmth of something he hadn't known in years. Hope. Michael's earliest memory was of the smell of incense drifting through St. Teresa's Church on a warm Sunday morning in Austin. His mother, Eleanor, held his hand tightly, singing every hymn with eyes closed, tears often sliding down her face. Her faith was fierce, radiant. It burned like something alive. His father, Hector, wasn't there. He rarely was. By the time Michael was 10, the absence had turned into abandonment. Hector left one night and never came back. No note, no goodbye, just a father-sized void that Eleanor tried to fill with prayer and love, working 2 jobs and still making it to every mass. Music entered Michael's life like a secret door. At 13, he found an old guitar at a neighbor's garage sale. The strings were rusted, the neck warped, but he didn't care. He cleaned it up, tuned it with the help of a local music teacher, and from that moment it became his refuge. The more he played, the more the world made sense. He wasn't the kid with the missing dad. He was the kid who could make people stop and listen. By 17, Michael was playing gigs at local coffee shops, church events, and eventually open mics downtown. People noticed. They said he had something rare, not just talent, but soul. His mum saved up for a better guitar and surprised him with it on his 18th birthday. "This is your gift, mijo," she said. "Use it to bless others." He nodded, tears burning his eyes, but he was already dreaming bigger. The world outside the church walls called to him, louder, faster, darker. Elena grew worried. "Don't lose yourself chasing something that doesn't love you back," she warned. "I'm not," he lied. "I just want to see how far I can go." He left home at 19, moved in with friends and chased music like it owed him something. At first it was thrilling. The city nights, the new sounds, the raw energy of live bars and impromptu sessions in smoky backrooms. He met Jesse at one of those jam nights, a drummer with hands like hammers and a laugh that could shake a room. They became inseparable, forming a band that mixed gospel roots with rock and blues. Austin loved them, gigs grew, and the local press called them the next big thing. But then, his mother got sick. Cancer, stage 4. Michael was on tour in Dallas when he got the call. He didn't come home. He told himself she'd get better, that he'd visit next week, that he was too busy to stop now. But she died before he made it back, and the guilt carved itself into his soul like ice. He returned too late, sat beside her empty hospital bed, clutching the guitar she'd given him, unable to speak. Jesse waited outside. No words helped. Michael stopped playing for weeks. When he finally picked the guitar back up, something was gone, the joy, the purity, the light. The gigs continued, but the drugs started too. First pills to sleep, then pills to stay awake, then heroin. It didn't take long before the band fell apart. "You're killing yourself," Jesse told him one night after Michael missed a major show. "You think your mom would want this?" Michael punched him, walked out, never looked back. Now sitting alone on a bench near that same church from his childhood, soaked from the rain, he stared at the closed doors. He whispered to no one, "I'm not lost. I'm just not found yet." But deep down, he knew. He'd been running ever since she died. The rain had stopped, but the air clung heavy with humidity as Michael wandered the cracked sidewalks of East Austin. It was a part of the city where dreams came to die slowly, in dim alleyways behind locked doors and under flickering streetlights. The buildings were tired, graffiti-covered, and the air carried the scent of stale beer and something sour, like regret. He hadn't seen Jesse in over 2 years, not since the night everything fell apart. They had just finished a packed show at Mohawk on Red River Street. The crowd had chanted for an encore. They were finally on the edge of something real. Record label meetings, invitations to South by Southwest, local radio play. But Michael had been high, slurring, out of rhythm. Jesse pulled him backstage and grabbed his collar. "You're throwing it all away," Jesse hissed. "You're not just hurting yourself anymore, Mike." Michael had laughed bitterly. "Hurting myself is all I've ever done right." Later that night, Michael stumbled into Jesse's apartment, looking for more pills. That's when he found them, Jesse and Rachel. Rachel, the girl who'd followed the band from bar to bar, who said she only had eyes for Michael, but she had her hands on Jesse. They didn't see him. He left without a word. The betrayal lodged deep, twisted with the pain already inside him. It wasn't just about the girl. It was about losing the one person who knew all his chords, who'd held him up on stage when he couldn't stand. After that, Michael spiraled fast. Couch surfing turned into shelter hopping turned into the street. Now the sidewalks buzzed with distant traffic and the hum of neon. He walked past an old bar they used to play in, the Rusty Note. The windows were boarded up now. A Felice sign hung crooked in the dark. He passed a man huddled against the wall, wrapped in a stained blanket, rocking slowly. "Got any change?" the man mumbled without looking up. Michael checked his pocket. Nothing but lint and a broken guitar pick. "Sorry, man," he said. The man nodded like he understood everything. Further down, he turned into a narrow alley where they'd once filmed a music video. Graffiti still covered the bricks, only now the colors had faded. He touched a tag that used to say "Rise Loud." Someone had crossed out "Rise" and written "Fall." He sat against the wall, knees pulled to his chest. He thought about Jesse, his heavy laugh, the rhythm in his bones, the way he used to tap the steering wheel like a snare drum during road trips. Jesse had believed in him when no one else did. Now he wondered if Jesse even remembered him. He wasn't angry anymore, not really, just tired, exhausted from dragging the past like a ball and chain. A cat jumped from a dumpster, hissing, startled by a distant siren. Michael didn't flinch. His stomach growled again. He'd gone too long without food. But it wasn't just hunger that hurt. It was the weight of being forgotten, no phone, no friends, no purpose. Just footsteps fading into alleys no one cared to walk. He closed his eyes. All he wanted was one real thing, a sign, a reason to stand up again. And though the alley was silent and the night wrapped him like a shroud, deep down he hoped. Maybe Jesse hadn't given up on him completely. Night fell hard over East Austin, the streets emptied, and the city's pulse slowed to a low, uneasy rhythm. Michael wandered without direction, his body aching, sweat clinging to his skin even in the cool air. Withdrawal gripped him tight, his limbs twitched, and his stomach cramped like it was folding in on itself. He hadn't used in 2 days, not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't get anything. Every shadow felt alive. He heard whispers that didn't belong to anyone. Footsteps that vanished when he turned around. He pressed his hands to his ears, breathing fast. "Just noise," he muttered. "Just my mind." But deep down, he wasn't sure. A car passed too fast, headlights glaring, and Michael flinched, stumbling into the sidewalk. He leaned against a lamppost, heart pounding like a drum. A couple across the street stared for a moment, then walked faster. He didn't blame them. He looked like something broken. He cut through a vacant lot overgrown with weeds and empty beer cans. His feet dragged. He didn't even notice the figure watching him until a voice called out. "Hey, you okay, brother?" Michael turned, squinting. A tall man stood near the fence, wearing a worn jacket and holding a Bible in one hand. His eyes were kind but piercing. Streetlight gleamed off the silver cross around his neck. "I'm fine," Michael said, trying to keep walking. "You don't look fine." Michael stopped. "Who are you?" "Elijah. I come here most nights. Pray for folks. Talk if they need it." Michael let out a dry laugh. "You one of those street preachers?" "I'm a man who's seen darkness and didn't die in it." Elijah stepped closer, cautious, respectful. "What's your name?" "Doesn't matter," Michael said. "Matters to God." Michael scoffed. "Don't start with that. I've heard it before." "You've heard a lot. Doesn't mean you listened." Something about Elijah's voice hit different. Calm, grounded. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise in Michael's head like a clean note. "You want prayer?" Elijah asked. "No." "You want peace?" Michael didn't answer. Elijah nodded like he already knew. "You're fighting a war no one sees, but he sees it, and he hasn't left you." Michael felt a chill. "I've done things. You don't know." "God doesn't ask for clean hands," Elijah said softly. "Just open ones." Michael turned away. "Save it for someone else." Elijah didn't follow, just said, "I'll be here tomorrow." "And the day after. You don't have to come clean, just come." Michael walked fast, almost running. His chest burned, not from the effort, but from something deeper, a rage mixed with longing. He didn't want pity. He didn't want sermons. But why did those words stay in his head? He turned into another alley, darker this time, his vision blurred. Hunger stabbed through him again. The concrete spun beneath his feet and he fell, scraping his elbow on the ground. The pain felt distant. His body was failing him, and somewhere beneath the panic and confusion, he felt fear. Real fear. As he lay there, heart racing, a whisper echoed in his mind, the same voice from the bridge. "Rise." His eyes welled up, though he didn't understand why. He wanted to scream, to beg for silence. Instead he whispered, "I don't know how." But even in the stillness he felt it, something stirring like light trying to break through the cracks. Maybe Elijah was right. Maybe the war wasn't just in his veins. The rain came back hard that night, drenching the city in sheets. Michael wandered until his body could take no more. His limbs were soaked, heavy, and trembling. He collapsed behind a row of dumpsters near a narrow back alley off Cesar Chavez Street. The cold bit into his skin, and exhaustion wrapped around him like a wet blanket. He curled up, shivering, his breath ragged. The hunger was gone now, replaced by a hollow numbness. He wasn't sure how long he lay there, eyes half open, drifting between reality and haze. Voices passed, footsteps echoed. No one stopped, until someone did. "Hey," a woman's voice said gently. Not startled, not afraid, just present. Michael didn't lift his head. He heard keys jingle, the crinkle of a paper bag, and then the warmth of something being draped over him, a thick wool blanket. "You're freezing," she said. "You need food." He finally looked up. A woman in her late 50s, olive skin, short curly hair tucked under a bandana. She wore an apron and smelled faintly of coffee and flour. Her name tag read, Rosa. "I don't have any money," he muttered. "I didn't ask for money," she said, kneeling down. "Wait here." She disappeared for a few minutes, then returned with a to-go box and a small bottle of water. "Eat," she said, placing it beside him. "Chicken and rice, warm." Michael hesitated, then opened the box with trembling fingers. The steam hit his face. He took one bite, then another, and another, faster. He didn't speak, just ate like he hadn't in weeks. Rosa watched him quietly. She didn't flinch when he coughed. She didn't look away from the bruises on his arms. "Long night?" she asked. He wiped his mouth. "Long life." She nodded like she understood. "I run a little cafe around the corner, been here 20 years. Seen a lot of folks come and go. You're not the first to find this alley." Michael looked down. "You gonna call the cops?" "No," she said simply. "Why would I do that?" He shrugged. "Because people like me scare people like you." Rosa gave a soft laugh. "Honey, I've been scared of worse than a skinny musician with bad luck." He blinked. "How'd you know I play?" She pointed at the guitar pick still hanging from his neck. "Call it a guess." Michael touched it, surprised he still had it. "I used to play," he said, almost whispering. "Not anymore." "Why not?" "Life happened. I broke things. People. Myself." Rosa didn't offer clichés. She just reached into her pocket and pulled out a napkin. On it she wrote something, then handed it to him. "Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. I open the cafe. Come by if you want breakfast and a place to sit that isn't the street." Michael took the napkin like it was something fragile. "Why are you helping me?" "Because someone helped me once," she said. "And I never forgot." He wanted to ask more, but she stood, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sleep. That blanket's yours now. Just don't let it keep you there too long." Then she walked away, keys jangling softly. Michael leaned back, the blanket warming his damp skin. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't afraid to close his eyes. He didn't know who Rosa really was, or why her kindness didn't come with conditions. But as sleep pulled him under, one word echoed in his mind. Rise. And for the first time, maybe, he wanted to. Morning light crept over the rooftops, pale and hesitant. Michael sat on the curb outside Rosa's cafe, wrapped in the blanket she'd given him. He hadn't slept much, but the food and kindness from the night before had done something strange. It quieted the storm, even if just for a little while. At exactly 6 a.m., Rosa unlocked the front door. She looked at him and smiled, like she'd been expecting him. "Come in," she said. "Coffee's hot." Michael followed her in, rubbing his hands for warmth. The cafe smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread, with soft jazz humming from an old speaker near the register. It was simple: wooden tables, photos of family and old musicians on the walls, and a hand-painted sign above the counter that read, "Mercy lives here." He sat in the corner, still unsure if he belonged. Rosa brought him a plate of eggs, toast, and bacon. "You got a name?" she asked, setting down a mug of coffee. "Michael," he said. She nodded. "Good to meet you, Michael." As he ate, Rosa cleaned the counter and chatted with her regulars. No one stared, no one pointed. It was like he was just another customer. After breakfast, he stood and mumbled, "Thank you for all of this." "You need more than food," she said. "I know that look." He glanced away. "You ever think about getting clean?" "I've tried," he said quietly. "Didn't stick." Rosa reached under the counter and pulled out a flyer. "There's a program, faith-based, down off Airport Boulevard. They take guys in, no questions asked. 30-day detox, then rehab. You want it?" Michael hesitated. He looked at the door. He could walk out and disappear again. No commitments, no pain. But then he remembered the voice, that night on the bridge, and again in the alley. Rise. He took the flyer. I don't have anything. They don't care. I'll drive you. He looked at her, surprised. Why? Because Mercy found me once too. And I don't like wasting it. An hour later, Michael sat in the back of Rosa's car as they pulled up to a worn-down building with a hand-painted cross above the door. New Horizons Recovery Center. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, and the garden out front was full of blooming yellow lilies. Inside, a man with a clipboard greeted them. Welcome, he said with a warm smile. You ready to do something different? Michael swallowed hard. I don't know, but I'm here. That's enough for today, the man said. I'm Kevin. The next hours passed in a blur. Intake forms, showers, clean clothes, a basic room with a twin bed and a Bible on the nightstand. Michael sat on the mattress staring at the ceiling. Later, during orientation, they gave him a tour. No phones. No outside contact for 2 weeks. Daily group sessions, Bible studies, chores. It felt more like a monastery than a clinic. That night, he met Lucas. Hey, the guy said, maybe early 20s, confident, bright-eyed. You're new. I'm Lucas. Been here 6 months. I help run morning devos. You like music? Michael nodded slowly. Used to. Cool. We got a beat-up piano in the chapel. Some guitars too. You'll fit right in. Michael didn't know how to respond, but something about Lucas felt genuine, like sunlight sneaking through a crack in the wall. As the lights dimmed and the building settled into quiet, Michael lay in bed, staring at the dark. He hadn't prayed in years, but somewhere deep, barely above a whisper, he thought, if you're still there, I showed up. The days at New Horizons followed a rhythm that was foreign to Michael. Early mornings, structured meals, group sessions, and evening devotionals. At first, it felt like prison wrapped in politeness, but slowly, something began to shift. Not peace, not yet, but space. Space to breathe, to think, to remember. Lucas stayed close, always checking in, always offering a joke or a verse. He didn't push, he just showed up, and that mattered. You know, Lucas said one morning as they scrubbed the dining hall floor, you don't have to say everything, but you should say something. Michael didn't respond. He just kept scrubbing. That afternoon during group therapy, the counselor, a bald man named Roland with sleeves rolled high and a voice like gravel, turned to him. You've been quiet, Michael. He stiffened in his chair. 12 men sat in a circle, all scarred in different ways, eyes turned to him. I don't talk, Michael said. Then right, Roland replied. But you gotta let it out. That's the deal here. Silence hung thick. Michael's fingers twitched in his lap. That night in his room, he pulled out a notebook from the common area and stared at the blank page. Words didn't come, only images. His mother's hospital bed. Jesse's face twisted in betrayal. Rachel's lipstick on a glass that wasn't his hands holding a needle. He dropped the pen. The next morning, Lucas found him in the chapel. You look like someone carrying bricks in your lungs. I can't do this, Michael muttered. Yes, you can. I let someone die, he said suddenly. A guy in my old band. Marcus. He overdosed in my apartment. I found him too late. I left. I didn't call anyone. I ran. Lucas sat beside him but didn't speak. I was high, Michael said, voice cracking. But I still knew. I could have done something. He was my friend. He pressed his palms to his eyes. I never told anyone that. Lucas whispered, You did now. Michael stood abruptly, pacing. What kind of person does that? What kind of garbage leaves a man to die and just disappears? You're not garbage, Lucas said firmly. You don't know me. I know broken. I lived in it, slept in it, shot it into my veins for 4 years, but God found me. In the worst place, and I let him in. Michael's jaw clenched. You don't get it. Lucas stepped forward. You think you're the only one haunted. You're not. You think you're too far gone. You're not. Michael's voice rose. I don't want to be forgiven. I want to go back and change it. Lucas stared at him. That's not how grace works. It doesn't erase. It redeems. Michael backed away, breathing hard. I can't do this. I should go. Lucas didn't move. Then go. But know this. That voice calling you back, that wasn't your imagination. That was him. And he's not done. Michael stormed out, fists tight, heart pounding. He didn't want to hear another word. But it echoed anyway. It doesn't erase. It redeems. That night Michael didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, mind racing, memories crashing in waves, guilt like fire under his skin. And still, under all of it, like a whisper in the rubble, was the smallest flicker of something he couldn't name. Maybe forgiveness wasn't a feeling. Maybe it was a choice. Michael dreamed of fire. A road stretched ahead of him, endless and cracked, under a sky that bled orange and red. He walked alone, barefoot, the heat burning his soles. On either side were shadows, twisted shapes that whispered things he couldn't quite hear. Guilt, shame, names he couldn't forget, faces he had tried to erase. Ahead, a wooden cross stood crooked in the middle of the road. As he approached, a voice called out, not loud but so clear it silenced everything else. Michael. He stopped. How you are not beyond me. When he woke, his pillow was damp with sweat, and his chest felt like something had cracked open. He sat up in the dark, breathing hard, trying to steady himself. It wasn't just a dream. At breakfast, he barely touched his food. Lucas noticed. Rough night? He asked. Michael nodded slowly. I saw him, or heard him. I don't know. Lucas leaned in. What did he say? Michael hesitated. That I'm not beyond him. Lucas smiled, but not smug. It was the smile of someone who'd heard that same voice in his own brokenness. You believe it? I want to, Michael admitted. But part of me keeps waiting to screw it all up again. Lucas set down his fork. The enemy doesn't have to destroy you. Just convince you you're already lost. Michael stared at his plate. I've never prayed, not really, not since I was a kid. Lucas pushed a worn leather Bible toward him. Start small. One sentence. Even just one word. God doesn't need speeches. Just honesty. Later, Michael sat alone in the chapel. The stained glass windows cast soft colors across the pews. He didn't kneel. He didn't bow his head. He just looked up and whispered, I'm here. Nothing dramatic happened. No thunder, no flash of light, just quiet. But it was the first time silence didn't feel like a threat. That afternoon, Elijah visited, the same street preacher from the alley. He was there for the men's Bible study invited by the center. Michael froze when he saw him. I remember you, Elijah said after the session. You looked different then. I still do, Michael replied. Elijah smiled. That's how it starts. They sat outside under a pecan tree. The sun filtered through the leaves, and for a moment, the world felt soft. I've heard that voice, Elijah said. When I was locked in a cell, detoxing, screaming for something, anything to stop the pain, I heard him say, You're mine. That was it. Just those words, but it changed everything. Michael listened closely, the ache in his chest both familiar and oddly welcome. I think I want to believe, he said. Then start there, Elijah replied. God doesn't ask for perfect belief. He asks for surrender. Michael looked up at the branches swaying above. What if I mess up again? You will, Elijah said without hesitation. We all do. But he doesn't walk away. That night, as Michael lay in bed, he opened the Bible Lucas had given him. The pages felt too clean, too unfamiliar. He flipped randomly and landed in Luke. His eyes caught a verse. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. Michael closed the book. Tears came quietly, without shame this time. Not for what he'd lost, but for what might still be possible. And somewhere inside, a whisper remained. Rise. 2 weeks later, Michael stood in front of a narrow brick building on East 11th Street, heart pounding. His hands trembled, not from withdrawal, but from uncertainty. Inside that building was someone he hadn't seen in years, someone whose name had become a ghost, Jesse. Lucas had found him online after Michael mentioned his name. Said Jesse now worked with a non-profit, helping men recover through music. After a long silence, Michael asked if he could arrange a meeting. Now, here he was. He almost didn't knock, but he did. The door opened slowly. Jesse stood there, older but unmistakably him, taller than Michael remembered, his hair shorter but the same guarded intensity in his eyes. They stared at each other for a long second. Jesse broke the silence. "You look different." Michael nodded. "I've been through it." Jesse stepped aside. "Come in." The inside smelled like sawdust and coffee. Posters of concerts covered the walls. Guitars hung from pegs. In the back, a small recording booth sat silent. They sat across from each other at a scuffed wooden table. "I didn't expect this," Jesse said. "I wasn't sure I'd actually come," Michael replied. Another pause. "I'm sorry," Michael finally said, voice low. "For everything. For bailing. For Rachel. For the show. For just disappearing." Jesse nodded slowly, arms crossed. "Get hurt? You didn't just leave me, Mike. You left the music. You left you." "I know. I hated you for a long time. I hated me too." Jesse exhaled, tension softening just slightly. "So, why now?" Michael swallowed. "I'm clean, trying to stay that way. I'm at new horizons. I heard God. I don't know how else to say it." Jesse looked surprised. "God, huh?" Michael gave a weak smile. "Didn't expect that from me, huh?" "I didn't expect anything from you," Jesse said, "but I've seen weirder things." They sat in silence again, but this time it didn't feel like a wall, just a bridge slowly rebuilding. "You still play?" Jesse asked. Michael looked at the guitars. "Not yet." "Well, we've got a studio here. Sometimes I teach kids how to write. Maybe you could come by, sit in." "No pressure." Michael nodded, grateful. "I'd like that." Jesse stood and grabbed a beat-up acoustic from the wall. He handed it over without a word. Michael took it, cradling it in his lap like something sacred. His fingers moved over the strings, unsure at first, then stronger. The sound was rough but honest. Jesse smiled. Still there. They played a simple chord progression together, something familiar from their early days. For a moment it felt like time hadn't shattered everything. Later they walked to a nearby cafe, not Rosa's, but cozy and familiar. They sat by the window, the city moving slowly outside. "Remember the time we got kicked out of that open mic for playing too loud?" Jesse asked. Michael laughed. "Yeah, you broke a snare. I tried to blame the amp." They both laughed for real this time. "I don't know what happens next," Michael said, as the laughter faded. "You don't need to," Jesse replied. "Just don't disappear again." Michael looked out at the passing cars, the people, the noise of life continuing. He felt lighter, not fixed, but freer. As they stood to leave, Jesse clapped a hand on Michael's shoulder. "Come by tomorrow. Bring that rust off your fingers." "I will." And for the first time in a long while, Michael meant it. The following days felt lighter. Michael spent his mornings in group sessions, afternoons helping with chores at the center, and evenings playing soft tunes on the old upright piano in the chapel. Lucas always hung nearby, offering jokes, verses, and sometimes silence, the kind that made room for healing. But healing, Michael learned, wasn't a straight line. One evening, after an intense group where a man relapsed and was taken away in an ambulance, Michael couldn't sleep. The sounds of panic from earlier still rang in his ears, the crying, the shouting, the smell of vomit and fear. It reminded him of Marcus, of the night he didn't call for help, of the weight he carried still. He paced his room like a caged animal, his hands itched, his mind spiraled. That voice, the one that whispered shame, returned with a vengeance. "You haven't changed. You're just pretending. It's only a matter of time." He grabbed his jacket, his shoes. His breath came fast. He walked past the sleeping halls, past the dark chapel, out into the street. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to get away. His feet carried him back toward downtown, back into old memories. He passed bars he used to play in, Others he used to pass out behind. Neon lights flickered like ghosts. His head buzzed with the urge to disappear. Then he saw it. The bridge. The same one from weeks ago. Congress Avenue. Rain began to fall again, thin and cold. He walked faster. By the time he reached the bridge, his heart pounded. He stood at the same spot, gripping the rail, soaked to the bone. His mind was screaming, not with words, but with a pressure he couldn't escape. "You're nothing, you'll never make it. Just let go." Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by a rumble that felt like the world groaning. He leaned forward. And then, the voice. Not distant, not gentle. Loud, firm. "Michael!" He spun around. Elijah was running toward him, soaked, panting, eyes wild with fear. "Don't you dare!" he shouted. "Not again, not this time." Michael's knees gave out, and he dropped to the ground, shaking. "I can't do it," he sobbed. "I thought I could, I tried." Elijah knelt beside him, grabbing his shoulders. "You fell, but you didn't fall alone. And you're not getting up alone either." Michael cried harder than he had in years. All the guilt, the shame, the voices, they poured out like poison. "I wanted to believe," he choked. "I did. You still can. I feel so empty." Elijah's voice softened. "Then let him fill it." Michael dropped his head. Rain mixed with tears. He whispered through clenched teeth, "If you're real, help me rise." Elijah closed his eyes. That's all he needed to hear. They stayed there for a long time, the city blurring behind them. Eventually Elijah helped him up. They walked back in silence, side by side. When they reached the steps of New Horizons, Michael paused. Lucas was waiting on the porch, arms crossed, eyes worried. "You okay?" he asked. Michael looked at both of them. "No, but I will be." Lucas nodded. "Then let's start again, together." And with that, Michael stepped back inside. Not perfect, but still standing. The next morning the sun broke through the clouds like a quiet promise. Michael sat outside the chapel with a fresh cup of coffee, wrapped in a blanket someone had left for him. His clothes were damp, his eyes swollen, but something in his chest had shifted. Not completely, but enough. Lucas sat beside him, silent at first. "You scared the hell out of me last night," Lucas said. Michael looked down. "I scared myself too." "You don't have to earn your way back in," Lucas added. "You're still here, that's what matters." Michael nodded slowly. "I almost didn't come back." "But you did." They sat without speaking, the breeze brushing softly over them. Inside, the center buzzed with quiet routine, the smell of breakfast, the shuffle of slippers down the hallway, the murmur of men healing in their own way. Later, in group, Michael didn't wait to be asked. "I relapsed in my mind last night," he said. "Didn't use, but I got close." Roland gave a slow nod. "You want to talk about it?" Michael's voice was steady. "I went back to the bridge. Same spot I was going to jump from weeks ago. I thought I had made it past all that, but I didn't. It caught up. A few men nodded silently. No judgment, just shared understanding. But someone came for me, Elijah. He reminded me, falling doesn't mean it's over, and I realized I can't keep walking this road alone." Roland leaned forward. "What do you want now?" Michael looked up, eyes clear. "I want to help, however I can." That afternoon he asked to volunteer in the kitchen. Rosa had once fed him without asking for anything. Now he wanted to do the same. He served meals, washed dishes, wiped tables. He spoke to the new guys, not like a preacher, but like someone who'd been exactly where they were. And people listened. One evening, while sweeping the hallway, Michael stopped by the chapel again. The guitar leaned against the wall untouched. He picked it up, sat on the bench, and tuned it carefully. Then, slowly, he played. The melody was rough, fingers stiff, but it was honest. He started writing, scribbles on napkins, song ideas in the margins of his Bible, fragments of verses that came to him during prayer. Lucas found him one night humming a tune. "What's that?" Lucas asked. Michael smiled. Something new. Might be a song. You gonna play it for us? Not yet, he said, but soon. The next day, Elijah stopped by again. I heard, he said, arms crossed, smiling. You played last night? Only to the walls, Michael replied. They listened better than most. They sat on the steps together, watching the sun dip below the skyline. You ready for what comes next? Elijah asked. I think so, Michael said, not because I'm strong, but because I'm not trying to be anymore. Elijah nodded. That's where real strength begins. The leaves rustled gently, and for a moment Michael closed his eyes and breathed deep. He wasn't healed, but he was healing. He wasn't whole, but he was being remade. And somewhere in the middle of it all, the voice remained, still calling, still whispering. Rise. The chapel was quiet except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan. Michael sat on the edge of the pew, fingers dancing lightly on the strings of a dusty acoustic guitar. The chords were simple, raw, but there was something honest in the sound, something that had waited years to be played. Across the room, Lucas leaned against the wall, listening. What's it called? He asked. Michael looked up. Risen from the dust. Lucas nodded slowly. Play it. Michael hesitated. Then he closed his eyes and began. The first verse came low, his voice rough but steady. I was broken, I was bleeding in the silence of my shame, but a whisper cut the shadows, and it called me by my name. As he sang, something inside him cracked open. Not pain, but release. The melody rose gently like breath after drowning. Each word felt like a brick lifted from his chest. By the time he reached the chorus, his hands no longer trembled. From the ashes, from the ruins, where the lost are left behind, I heard mercy in the silence, and it told me, you're still mine. When the final chord faded, the room sat still. Lucas clapped once, slow. That's not just a song, he said. That's a story. Michael lowered the guitar. It's mine. Lucas smiled. Let's share it. Later that week, Jesse showed up at New Horizons with a portable recording setup. He'd heard about the song through Lucas and offered to help record it. I owe you that much, Jesse said, setting up mics in the chapel. Michael sat in front of the mic, the guitar resting on his knee, the lyrics handwritten on a folded sheet beside him. As he played, Jesse worked silently, eyes sharp, heart focused. When they finished, he leaned back in the chair and exhaled. That, Jesse said, is going to hit people where it counts. They mixed the track that night. Lucas designed a simple cover, a cracked sidewalk with a single flower growing through. A few days later, Rosa called. You've been hiding from me, she said with mock sternness. And I've got an open mic coming up at the cafe, Michael laughed. I'm not ready for a crowd. Too bad. I already put your name on the board. The cafe was packed that night, mostly locals, regulars, a few from the recovery center. The smell of coffee and empanadas filled the room. Lights hung low, casting a warm glow over the wooden tables. When Rosa introduced him, Michael walked to the small platform with his heart thudding like a drum. He looked out over the crowd, caught Jesse's nod, Lucas's grin, Elijah's steady gaze. He took a deep breath, sat on the stool, and began. The first chords rang out clear. Then his voice, no nerves, no shaking, just truth. As the song unfolded, silence took the room. A few people wiped their eyes. Others closed theirs. Rosa stood behind the counter, hands pressed to her chest. When he finished, the applause was soft but deep. The kind that didn't just say, well done. It said, thank you. Michael smiled. He didn't need a record deal. He didn't need a spotlight. He just needed this. A voice had told him to rise, and now he was helping others do the same. The recording of Risen from the Dust made its way through the recovery center first, passed around on old phones and burned CDs. Then Jesse uploaded it to a small community page. Within days, messages started arriving, not from record executives, but from people who heard their own battles in the lyrics. Your song kept me from relapsing last night. My brother overdosed last year. This gave me peace. I don't believe in God, but I believe in what you sang. Michael read each message slowly, almost in disbelief. His story was no longer his alone. It was becoming a lifeline. Elijah encouraged him. Testimony isn't just words. It's what God does through you when you stop hiding. Don't waste it. So Michael began visiting places most avoided. At first, just small groups, shelters, halfway houses, support circles. He would bring the guitar, play his song, then tell the truth about the bridge, the drugs, Marcus, and the voice that called him back. He didn't glamorize his pain. He didn't exaggerate his healing. He just spoke honestly. And people listened. One night, after sharing in a small county jail outside Austin, a young man in an orange jumpsuit approached him with tears in his eyes. "I didn't think God could still want me," the man whispered. "But maybe he does." Michael clasped his hand. "He does. If he wanted me, he wants you." Moments like that fueled him. Not fame, not applause. Just the quiet fire of someone's heart flickering back to life. But then came a harder test. Rosa found him at the cafe one morning, her expression tender but serious. "Your father came by," she said. "Hector." Michael froze. The name felt like an old wound reopening. "He's sick," Rosa continued, "staying at a small home near Riverside. Asked if you'd come." Michael stared at the floor, emotions colliding, anger, grief, confusion. The man who left them, who left her. And now he wanted what? Forgiveness. "I can't," Michael muttered. Not him. But that night, he couldn't sleep. He remembered his mother's voice, how she prayed for Hector even after he walked out. He remembered Elijah's words, "It doesn't erase, it redeems." The next afternoon he went. The care home was quiet, walls painted soft yellow. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and roses. Hector lay in a small bed, thinner than Michael remembered, oxygen tube in his nose. His eyes opened slowly when Michael entered. "Son," he rasped. The word cut deep. "You don't get to call me that," Michael said, voice sharp. His hands shook as he stood at the foot of the bed. "You left us. You left her." Hector's eyes glistened. "I know, and I've lived with it every day. I don't deserve forgiveness." "You're right," Michael snapped. "You don't." The silence after was heavy, the kind that threatened to crush. But then Michael remembered the bridge, the rain, the voice. Rise. He thought of Marcus, of the young man in the jail, of grace he hadn't deserved but had received anyway. His voice broke. "But neither did I." He stepped closer, tears burning. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached for his father's hand. It was frail, bones pressing through skin. Hector gripped weakly, weeping. Michael whispered, "I forgive you." For a long moment, they just held on, the years between them closing like a wound stitched by trembling hands. That night, as he walked home under the Texas sky, Michael felt lighter. Not because the past had vanished, but because he had finally let it go. Weeks passed, and Michael noticed something strange. The voice that once startled him in the night, the one that called out from bridges and alleys, no longer came from somewhere outside. It was quieter now, closer, like an ember glowing within his chest. Not demanding, not fearful, just steady. He told Elijah about it one evening while they sat on the porch of New Horizons. "It feels different," Michael said. "Like I don't have to wait for him to shout anymore." Elijah nodded slowly. "That's growth, son. At first God has to break through the noise. Later, he teaches you to carry his voice inside." Michael let those words settle. For years, silence had been his enemy. Now silence felt like a companion. He began walking through his old neighborhood, not to chase ghosts, but to see it with new eyes. The cracked sidewalks, the corner stores, the benches where he'd once passed out. None of it mocked him anymore. It reminded him of where he'd come from and of why he couldn't go back. Outside one liquor store, he noticed two teens arguing over money. One had a small bag in his hand, the kind Michael had seen and bought too many times before. He stepped closer, heart thudding. "Don't do it," he said softly. The boys turned, suspicious. "Who are you?" one asked. Someone who's been where you're standing, Michael replied. And trust me, it doesn't end the way you think. They scoffed, ready to walk away. Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, the lyrics to Risen from the Dust. He handed it to the older boy. Keep it. Even if you don't believe a word of it, just read it later. The boy frowned but took it. They left without another word. Michael stood there a long time after, unsure if it mattered, but he remembered Elijah saying once, "We don't save anyone, we just plant seeds." That night back in the chapel, Michael prayed quietly, "Thank you for not giving up on me. Help me not give up on them either." The next Sunday he visited St. Teresa's, the church of his childhood. The pews felt smaller, the air still smelled of incense, and the crucifix above the altar seemed taller than ever. He sat in the back, head bowed. He remembered his mother's voice singing hymns here. He remembered her prayers for a boy who ran too far. "I think I finally get it, Mom," he whispered. "You weren't trying to keep me from living, you were trying to keep me alive." Tears blurred his vision, but they weren't bitter anymore. When Mass ended, an elderly woman tapped his shoulder. "I remember you," she said. "You used to play here. Little boy with the guitar." Michael smiled softly. "Yeah, that was me." "Still playing?" He thought of the cafe, the song, the letters from strangers. He nodded. "I am. Again." The woman squeezed his hand. "Then keep playing. The world needs it." Walking home that evening, the sky painted itself in gold and lavender. Michael felt the quiet voice again, not booming, not commanding, just there. "Rise." And this time he didn't look around to see where it came from. He simply placed a hand on his chest and answered, "I will." The Texas sun was warm on Michael's skin as he walked down East 6th Street, guitar case in hand. The city buzzed with its usual rhythm, honking cars, food trucks sizzling, laughter spilling from cafes. But for him the sound wasn't noise anymore. It was life, full and unfiltered. He paused at a mural painted on the side of a building, bold letters reading, "Hope is stronger than fear." A few years ago he would have scoffed. Now he just smiled. Later that evening he played again at Rosa's Cafe. The place was packed, people spilling into the doorway. Jesse tapped the drums with easy confidence. Lucas strummed beside him, and Elijah sat at a corner table, nodding to the rhythm. Rosa moved between tables with coffee pots and pride shining in her eyes. When the last chord of Risen from the Dust rang out, the room erupted in applause. Michael stood, letting the sound wash over him, not as validation but as testimony. He had fallen as far as a man could fall, and yet here he was, standing. After the show, a young woman approached him, clutching her phone. "Your song, it saved me," she said. "I was going to give up, but then I heard it. It made me believe maybe I wasn't alone." Michael's throat tightened. He reached out and squeezed her hand. "You're not," he said softly. "You never were." Walking home that night, Jessie walked beside him. "Never thought I'd see the day we'd play again," Jessie said, half smiling. Michael chuckled. "Me neither. But I'm glad we did." "You're different now," Jessie added. Michael nodded. "I had to be." When they reached the corner where their paths split, Jessie clapped him on the shoulder. "Don't stop, Mike. The world needs you to keep going." Michael watched him leave, then turned toward the center. The street was quiet, the stars scattered faintly above the city glow. He stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and closed his eyes. The voice was there again, but it no longer sounded separate. It was part of him now, not a call from beyond, but a steady echo within. "Rise." He breathed deeply, whispering back, "I will, every day." The road ahead wasn't guaranteed. Temptations would come. The memories would still sting. But Michael wasn't running anymore. He was walking, one step at a time, into a future shaped not by his failures, but by the grace that had met him in the darkest night. And if his story could keep one more soul from the edge, then every scar, every wound, every sleepless night would be worth it. Before we close, if Michael's journey has touched something in your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. These stories remind us that no matter how deep the fall, there's always a way back up. And don't stop here. Click on the video appearing now on your screen to hear another powerful story of redemption and hope. Because sometimes, when we're at our lowest, the smallest whisper can change everything.